So we've been doing delivering SaaS. I personally started with Mercury back in 2005. I had come from a very early startup that was doing PeopleSoft SaaS, and I joined back in 2005, and we actually got started, or Mercury got started in 1999 with its first SaaS offering. So we've been in this business probably longer than any of our competitors. And obviously through that process, you learn a lot, right? You learn a lot about all aspects of SaaS and where the pitfalls are and how to support your customers and so forth. So we've been delivering SaaS for 23 years. We have improved and consistently looked at our processes and our methods. We used to host all of our own data centers, and we just a few years ago, we decided to get out of that business, and we use AWS, Azure, and some of the other cloud providers to deliver this service. Our primary is AWS. We have, I believe, we're up to 26 SaaS products. We have a very aggressive program to move as many products that in our portfolio as possible to SaaS. So we continually are adding products and moving them to a SaaS delivered model. And we can scale. We have a pure SaaS products, which I'll go into. We have our ISO 27001 as well as our SOX 2, very experienced at vetting processes with our customers and security. So we've been doing this a while, and I think we're very good at it, and our environments and our platform is extremely stable, which I'm very proud of, and took a lot of work to get there. So if we look at products, this is just an overview. There are more products coming, but you can see that, you know, our ADM suite, ITOM, CyberRes, and our information management and governance, we have many solutions. Some are pure SaaS solutions, such as Load Runner Cloud, and then others are, you know, legacy solutions that we have SaaSified essentially, and we help you migrate your application over. We've done hundreds. We have a 100% success rate doing the migrations. So obviously, if you're running on-prem, you know, most definitely you can run on SaaS. I know everyone has integrations and this and that, but we have so far been able to move any on-prem customer over to SaaS. Okay. So that's a little bit about our operations and what we do. So I wanted, and again, why talk about SaaS Flex and what is SaaS Flex? So SaaS Flex is our consumption-based license model. What it enables you to do is essentially, if we look at it in a very simple form, it's like a gift card. It's like an MSA card as well. If you have a medical, you know, service card where you would essentially pledge money each year, you put that money into that account, and then you're able to use it for medical services, prescriptions, and so forth. Very, very similar concept. We work with you. We go through a detailed assessment and an analysis of your utilization, what you're using, what you're not using, how much you're using of it, when you're using, when your peaks are, and you're using your peak capacity. Then we provide a contractual menu of all of the different services that you can consume using those SaaS Flex credits. They can be across you know, different product lines. And then we meet with you. You have a customer success manager that will have a monthly meeting with you. We'll talk about, you know, what your next month's license allocation should be, what you have planned, and then we'll go ahead and implement those licenses, and we'll do that monthly with you. until the end of the contract. At that time, we'll have discussions about forecasting. What's your burn rate? Are you looking like you're going to have a surplus? Are you looking at having a deficit? Right. So we keep in constant check on what is being used, and then allocate the licenses for the month, as well as provide you insights in terms of what your utilization is looking like on previous months' allocations. So why do we do this, and why is it so important? I mean, I thought a little bit about this before the call. The perpetual license model, I was trying to put my finger on when it kind of became obsolete. There's still a lot of perpetual licenses out there, but if we look at our app usage and so forth, typically we don't consume and buy licenses forever. So the perpetual license model is, I purchase this license, I own it forever, right? And I'm going to pay an annual fee. Typically it's 20%, and that's my maintenance cost, right? And that is subject to increase, and you're going to pay, if you want the upgrades and so forth, you're going to pay going forward each annual. Okay, so we own the license forever, and I'm going to go through some of the details around that. So some of the challenges, right? Recurring annual support costs, which are subject to increase year over year. We have, and this is a big one that many people don't really focus on, and that's the risk is solely on the customer to get value. Once you buy these licenses, it's up to you to come up and figure out how to get the full value from the license, implement it, support it, right? And it's you made the buy, so the idea of we don't like it, or it's not everything you said it was, you're pretty much at the mercy of the vendor to meet your expectations, right? You can't just cancel it. You made the investment. And then the just-in-case capacity. We have, I run into this all the time with customers. They're over-licensed, and the reason why they're over-licensed is because there's a particular surge or peak within their year that could happen. Sometimes it doesn't always happen, but they end up licensing to that high watermark because they have to. They need to make sure that no one gets, license count exceeded or unavailable licenses, so they buy more, and sometimes up to 20% more, just depending on the company. So we, as part of that analysis, we see that there's usually more licenses than are being used, and then also you pay support on those licenses, right? So it's an investment. Most customers continue to pay the support on the licenses because the just in case, right? What if we need more? What if we expand? So forth. But it's a high dollar cost. SaaS Flex gives you the ability to adjust, and you do pledge those dollars, but you can use and base those on your actual consumption. And again, we help you do that. And then, of course, the risk of being out of compliance, right? Unnecessary, stresses around license management, the rogue, ALM or, Load Runner Cloud or Load Runner Enterprise rogue instance that somebody was just testing, or no one really understands what the licensing high watermark is, and you end up using too much, and then that potentially creates issues with compliance to your agreement. And we avoid that because we implement the licensing for you, so there's no risk of falling out of compliance. We govern that with you. So let's just real quick, the top 3 perpetual license challenges, right? You hold all the risk. You have to buy it. You have to buy more than essentially you need, so that if you need it, it's there for you. Okay. The next is you need to typically over license to meet that mark, right? Because you want to make sure that you have enough. Nobody wants to get that nasty message, and then there's all kinds of panic around, do we have enough, how much more do we need, and so forth. And then this is the big one where most of these discussions around SaaS focuses on number 3, right? And that's that you have to implement the software. You need servers, you need administrators, you need to handle the upgrades, right? And any third-party software that's involved. So that's usually the focus of the pitch. But in the case of SaaS Flex, we give you a lot more value, and we address the challenges that we've heard from our customers. And I'll get into more details with that. So if we look at the SaaS Flex model in comparison, right, the first item is, it's a consumption-based model. So each month you can change. We know business requirements change, but you can change what you consume. You may have implemented a SaaS Flex for ALM and Load Runner Enterprise, and you may have a less demand for ALM for a particular time frame. Well, you can take those dollars that normally or were allocated for ALM, and you can spend them on your Load Runner Enterprise, right? And vice versa. What we see, and I'll go through some examples internally of the real power of this, is we see that customers now understand what their costs are. It's very hard, as you know, we could say, all right, my cost is the MFR. But it's more than that, right? The cost of software is the servers, are the people who support it, and right down to the data centers and the networking and so forth. It's very hard to assess and distribute those costs across a large organization. SaaS Flex gives you the ability to do that. It eliminates the barriers of a perpetual license. So if you think a little bit about what I mentioned in terms of high watermarks, you no longer have any high watermarks. You no longer have any limitations. You have as many licenses as you want to pay for that particular time period monthly. So if you have a surge, and let's say a project, Load Runner Enterprise project, comes to light, and they need a protocol that you didn't currently own, and they need it in numbers that would not be practical for this one project to purchase. Now you have the ability to consume what you need for a reduced time frame, which it might be 2 months for this particular test sequence, and that title. You're not making that technical investment that is in duration, right? Perpetual, forever, or even the temp license keys. There's a lot of challenges around that, but you're really able to use those titles that you didn't own in the quantities that you need for the period that you need. And that's very unique, and customers just love this because it gives you that flexibility. And then you have the insight of exactly what the capacity costs. So that is really, really great. I don't know if there's anyone out there that is kind of the leader of the Center of Excellence for one of our products, but when these rogue requests come up, you may be asked for something extreme, right? So and I saw this during the COVID. There were, partners of ours that were building and testing COVID registration sites. So they came up with some real extreme numbers, okay, because they had no idea how many folks were going to rush the site at one time. And they only needed that testing capacity, in some cases, one test. Well, SaaS Flex gave them the ability to purchase just that one test for that 1 month of capacity that they needed in very high numbers of virtual users. And just to I'll kind of just map out that scenario. So their path was, well, how much do you need? And I'll show you in the next slide how that all works, but they were able to respond with the cost and exact cost for the duration. And that gave them the ability to build back the project and have that capacity available near instantly. Okay, so very powerful, and we can change those allocations. I've mentioned that, so you can get very efficient in terms of what's allocated, how much it costs, and that can vary. So now you can ride that variance in the high watermark month over month, whereas before you had to figure out what's the highest number I think I'm going to need, and then most of the time customers put a 10 to 20% above that number just so they don't run out. That goes away. Now we're looking at, okay, what do I have planned? What do I have scheduled? And what do I need to support that requirement? So again, this is just a quick example of what I was talking about. And we do have our ITOMs. I use the ADM products for this particular example. So you can see at the right of the screen, we have our ALM, LRC, all ADM products, but there's multiple products. And then if you notice above the center owner, you can see the SaaS Flex rate card. So that tells that individual exactly what a 100 pack of Web 2.0 virtual users cost, what a ALM fully loaded cost, including the hardware and so forth. It gives them the exact cost. So now when these requests come in, instead of, and I'm going to use the example later on and show you, instead of having to run around and figure out, okay, how do I meet this requirement? Maybe it's a temp license, but then I need hardware, and where am I going to get the hardware? AWS, and what's the cost, and how long do I need the temp license, and trying to coordinate all of that. Right, it's just the coordination of getting everything and then providing that to the project is a feat in itself, never mind the costs associated with it. So now they can say, okay, that capacity for the 2 months you asked for is going to cost X. And they may say, okay, what if I went up to this number, because now it's a much smaller investment, and it will give the ability not only for you to meet the need, but to also give your projects the ability of testing at the levels they truly want to test, but they've been trained to say, no, we can't go over 1,000 of this or 10,000 of that. Okay, so it opens up that door, because it's no longer a limitation of how many licenses do I have. It's about how much do I want to spend of my SaaS Flex credits. Okay, that's that. So a little deeper double click in. So on the left is the standard license model, and each pillar represents your utilization, your typical utilization. And let's say in September, that bar is our peak utilization because we're wrapping up our year or so forth, something like that. And that represents 100 users. So you can see you have to license to 100, and most customers say, okay, 100, geez, I don't want to cut it that close. Let's make it 120. They license for 120. You pay MFR for that 120 licenses for every one of those months, even though you can see, your average is much lower than that, right? Roughly half. But you need that September. Well, SaaS Flex changes the game on that. And you can see on the left again, the dark blue is all stranded, what we call stranded capacity. It's something you paid for, whether it was in the initial licensing and the MFR, right? Month over month, you can break that MFR, and that represents a full 120 capacity when you're using far less. And it's invisible. So you just pay that bill. You say, I have 120 users available, and everybody goes on and they use more or less, whatever, up to that 120 mark. On SaaS Flex, what we do is we look at your usage, and now we figure out what each one of those pillars represents in dollars. And we determine an average consumption rate, and that's what your pledge is. That's the money that you would put on your SaaS Flex card for a particular time frame, which we typically always do these 3 years. The reason being is we allow you to roll forward any unused capacity to the next contract year. Okay, so again, back to the medical, spending card, it would be like you're able to put $1,000, and if you don't use but 800, you can roll forward the remaining to the next year and then add additional monies to that year. So what it allows for, and I think the easiest way to look at this is any dollar spent in year 1 is still good in year 3, okay, because they roll forward. Any money remaining or SaaS Flex credits remaining at the end of the term is forfeited, okay? And I call this a shared risk model, because what we're doing is we're moving away from this high watermark model. Here's the capacity you need because here's your peak usage. And we're saying you can buy by the drink, you can pay by the drink. And in turn, we're going to ask that we estimate it and we do a good job on this. And you can, by the way, add to the contract at the contract cost at any time. You can add additional monies if you run short. But at the end, you forfeit any remaining. Okay, and we do our best to work closely, customer success manager, forecasting that, preventing that, giving you ways to use that money for training or even services. Okay, but if you look at the risk or the potential for remaining after 3 years, and then compare it to that blue of stranded capacity, is far more efficient. Okay. So you have to keep that in mind. No one likes to say, oh, I have these additional credits and they expired, right? But if you do your comparison to your current model on the Perpetual side, you will see that you saved a lot of money, right? And you not only that, but I'll go into some of these details, but you removed your Perpetual license barriers, right? You improved your efficiency because you're now able to control that spend, use those, for year $1 for future requirements, whereas MFR, when you pay MFR, it's gone, right? Your trapped capacity, you have full control because you can change it month over month, adjust, go higher, go lower, right? Your dollars last longer, as I noted, and exist into year 3. And then you have a predictive pricing element, and this is a really big one in support of the 3-year commitment. We annually invoice you, so we're not asking you to pay 3 years up front, but you lock in your pricing. And in these times, it's an incredible advantage to do so, because otherwise with inflationary times, locking in at a specific cost is very beneficial, okay? So SaaS Flex use case, these are all, opportunities that I worked on, and this was a large financial customer. They had lots of internal customers with lots of demands. Right? They wanted to say, okay, we have these 10 different business units, and we want to allocate these costs across the business units. But as anyone knows who's done this, it's very hard, because you don't have those numbers available, and really to get to the level of granularity and divide those costs, one project using 100 users, the next using 5, it's very difficult to do so. Okay, so a lot of times we see like a general peanut butter spread across all of the business units, which it is just not very efficient and doesn't help from an accuracy on accounting. They had high software support costs, and many of the licenses that they were paying support on were no longer utilized, right? And then they had new requirements for software that they didn't own. Right, so again, their money is locked in on assets. They don't want to cancel the support, because what if, right? We paid good money, it's an investment, but yet they had new requirements. Okay, so what we put in place for them is, and it's very similar to the slide I just showed, so I'm not going to go through all the details, but we use the across the usage bill back feature. And again, we went through rate card, et cetera. The customer requiring the usage, we could literally track that back to a particular project. So if they needed 10 users, we mapped that 10 users to a particular product. And then our manager of this service on the customer side was able to accurately distribute those costs. And it made life a lot easier. Now each group is paying what they're actually using versus this very, abstract kind of, here we're just going to split up this cost, or we're going to have centralized services and it's coming out of some central budget. So now we got very, very granular on what those costs were and the distributions of those costs. Now, the second one was a large management consulting firm. So you can think about, how many projects they work on for different customers, constant new capacity, how much am I going to charge them for this? Same scenario. Right. So this happened to be Load Runner Enterprise, right? They had a very large footprint on premises because they're serving all these different projects, right? And there was a general theme. Projects would come and say, hey, I need to test for 50,000 users, and they say, well, we can't do that. We can give you 10. And I'd say, oh, 10's not enough. Well, I'm going to. And the next question was, what would 50 cost on a temporary basis? And that individual, and this is a true story, would have to run around, call us, what's a temp keep for 6 months cost, negotiate that, right? Come up with the final cost, then go out to AWS or Azure, find out what the cost for the hardware was, right? Try to coordinate all of this at one time. So I got my hardware, I got my licensing, and is the project ready? Because it's a short term, right? And I don't want to have to take another 6-month hit on licensing because I didn't get that right. So again, this directly addressed by giving them the ability to, one, understand what the costs were and not have any restrictions on the capacity. Went back to the customer and basically said, this is how much it's going to cost for this amount of capacity for these months. And they said, well, how about this? And they came up with this super crazy test. I think it was 5 million virtual users sustained for 1 hour. And what we were able to do is we have a virtual user hour model. So we literally were able to give them a cost for one test, or they were able to provide their customer a cost for one test for that hour for that level of users, because they have all that information in front of them. So really powerful. And this customer is really, really leveraging it hard and has avoided a lot. One, it's improved their service and their abilities. And then two is they can bill back the customer ultimately because they know what their costs are. Okay. And demand-driven SaaS, I'm not going to go through this, but really it's everything that I've described up to this point. So let's talk about migration. So if you're on-prem, and you've been running on-prem for 15 years and you have integrations and you have different configurations. The way that works is we'll send you a questionnaire, the sales team, and again, I manage a team that covers North America that will work specifically with you and get this information, explain all this stuff. But in a nutshell, we'll ask you to complete a questionnaire. We'll review your integrations, and sometimes it's very easy, and Jira or what have you, and they're very straightforward. But sometimes there's some deeper integrations that we'll bring those back to our delivery team and we'll review those. We'll have a call, we'll discuss them and so forth and figure out a plan, one, to implement them, and two, to verify and be able to test those. So we have those discussions very early on, and then we review your timeline. Now, every migration, it does not take the same amount of time, but I can give you a ballpark just being involved in many of these. The next step is once you sign your SaaS contract, we determine the best migration approach. And most of the time it's a phased approach, right? Where we identify groups of projects, whether it's, whatever the user community is, and we group those. we migrate them over, verify, and then we go to the next group and we schedule that with you. Very, very rarely, although we do sometimes, with a smaller implementation, we do a big bang, right? Where we schedule it all and we do it over a weekend, and Monday morning, everybody comes in and, they're live, right? The scary stuff. Typically, that's not the case. We'll go ahead and we'll work out the phasing, work with your team on the grouping, and again, we're in lockstep with you on this. Our professional services team has a ton of experience doing this, and they again, these typically go very, very smoothly. We do the environment cleanup. We work with you. Sometimes customers have never cleaned up their environment. We do offer some archiving as part of the base product SaaS service. We'll review that with you. We'll review an archiving plan so that if you are not doing any archiving today, that we do that cleanup and we keep your environment clean, and we have the ability to resurrect any projects, let's say for ALM, that have been archived, and we can deliver those projects for auditing reasons. You might need to go back, and we provide them on the version that they were archived in. So if you've had to do that, it's not easy to go back and find an old version of ALM so that you can restore that project. So it's very, very good in that term, in that way as well. And then we just go through building out the SaaS environments. We upgrade you to the latest version. So if you're behind on your upgrade versions, it's included as part of our migration. A lot of our customers come to us just for that. They've fallen behind. They're ready to go out of support. They don't have the resources any longer to focus. They don't have the budget. So once you migrate over to SaaS, we handle your upgrades and manage that for you going forward. We add the patches. We don't do it in a vacuum. We work closely with you. We understand that we can't just say, hey, we're upgrading you next Tuesday. You may have critical projects. Our customer success manager, I was a customer success manager at one time for these services. I worked very closely with the project team, and we make sure that the upgrade is done on your schedule versus when we want to do it. Okay, and I think that's a big one as well. That differentiates us. We do our trial runs, our validation, and then we go ahead and we do the move to production. We get you up and live, and then from that point forward, you have a customer success manager. That's your point of contact for escalations, etc. Anything else we handle, the majority of the heavy lifting. You'll still administer the application, but anything that needs to be done configuration-wise, special for your team, you would enter a support request. If there was any issues in the time, if you need it urgently, you call up your customer success manager and they escalate it internally. So here's a little more of a detailed, I'm not going to go through these and kill you with this, but basically, we typically these projects take from 3 to 4 months to migrate. Okay, that can vary. It can be faster, and it could go, I think, up to, I'm trying to think of the longest migration that I've been involved with, and it was a very large one. I think it was 5 months. Okay, so it's not forever. We're good at it. Like I said, we have 100% success rate, and we have a very experienced, dedicated delivery team to help with this. Okay, so what's next? How do you find out more? Again, my team specifically helps you build your business case. In most cases, you can't just walk in to your senior management and say, hey, I want to move everything to SaaS. They'll say, why? Because it's a good idea. What are we going to save? What's going to cost? We put all of that together with you. We do a total cost of ownership comparison for what you have on-prem. We have worked with many, many customers, so we use preliminary numbers based on customers that are like in size, and we refine it. And at the end result, we look at your current pain points, challenges, and how SaaS will resolve that. And we build this business case with you, and in order to justify not only the value, but also the costs associated in comparison to what you're paying today. Okay, so this is a big item. My ask is, reach out to your Micro Focus account executive. Ask them about SaaS. My team is, I have individuals allocated to all our major divisions across the country, and we will help, and we've done this many times, we will help you understand what the journey looks like, where the value is, and what the cost savings is going to be. And we just ask, please reach out, and we would be happy. If SaaS is a good fit, great. If it's not a good fit, you vetted it out, right? You're gonna walk away with something of value, okay, in that decision. Okay, so hopefully I'm not running too much over here, but what Steve or Vince, any questions that you'd like to kind of bring up? That was a general theme of questions. Maybe I can elaborate a little bit more in that area.
We've got I wouldn't say there's a general theme. There've been some specific examples with a number of virtual users, and how would that be calculated, that kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. You want to address a scenario like that, or we can take that
yeah, sure,
take offline. Okay,
yeah,
so
no.
Here's the scenario. Okay,
sure.
So we have two runs with 5,000 and 10,000 V users. Yep. So would the calculation be 7,500 users average, or to be 10,000 V users since there's around 5,000, 10,000, or would it be 15,000 virtual users?
Okay, so obviously, and let me ask a couple of questions. So from first of all, are they concurrent runs?
Right there, yeah. So that's right. Where I was going with it. We would need to understand.
Yeah, I'll make some assumptions. So basically, what we do is we work with you and we look at your requirements for a particular month. We have two different avenues we can go down, and some of our customers mix LoadRunner Enterprise and LoadRunner Cloud. Okay, so I'm going to talk about LoadRunner Enterprise and assume that these are individual runs, right, that need to happen sometime in the month. So first off, the virtual users that we would allocate, and whatever the high water mark was, Vince, was it 7,500 or 5,000?
10,000. 10,000. Yeah, okay, one run is 10, one run's 5.
Yeah, so you would allocate that 10,000 for that month, and you would be unlimited in terms of the runs that you could do up to that 10,000. Okay, so that would cover your 5,000 run, as well as the 10,000. Okay, so that would be your high water mark for that month. If you needed to run 10 times a 5,000 virtual user test, you would need 5,000 virtual users allocated, because you have unlimited runs for that monthly period. Okay. Now, and I'll just throw out one last thing. If you needed to allocate more, let's say during the month you said, okay, 10 went really well, and I'm in the third week of the month, I want to do 20,000, right? Then you would you have a choice. You could either wait till the next calendar month, which is essentially a week away, and add the additional capacity for the following month, or you could implement it for for that same month, but you would be charged for that whole month of capacity. Okay, we don't do any prorating for X number of days, et cetera. So it's always, and again, shared risk model, we ask that you make that commitment and we work with you to determine what that should be. And if you find yourself in that situation, you would typically just, roll over into the next month. Unless it was absolutely urgent, it had to happen on that third week, then you would call up your customer success manager. They would implement the additional licensing you need, and you would essentially pay for that high water license for the entire month, which would be the same if you look at it as if you implemented that for the following month. You'd still have to incur that cost for the full 20,000. Okay, any others?
There was a follow-up on that one. So it does not matter how many executions you are doing. And the original question was, with LoadRunner Cloud, and where the only licensing factor is the number of virtual users.
So I'll talk about LoadRunner Cloud a little bit. So we have two consumption methods within LoadRunner Cloud. One would be just as I described. You set a certain number of virtual users. With LoadRunner Cloud, the controllers and the load generators, the cloud load generators are included, right, for that particular run. They'll get spun up depending on the test. If you're not charged by controllers, so you're essentially, you don't have to allocate costs for controllers, et cetera. And then the second was virtual user hours, right? And now there you can activate within a SaaS Flex contract a certain number of hours, and those hours would be essentially, let's just use the example. Let me see if I could do some quick math. 1,000 web virtual users, 5 4-hour tests, right, would be, I believe, 20,000 virtual user hours. Does that sound right? If we were just okay, but you get my drift. In other words, it's metered. So however, each hour that you run 1,000 virtual users, you will be charged that. So if it's a 4-hour test, 1,000 users would be $4,000. If you needed to run 5 of those tests, it would be 5 times that number.
All right, and we got a question about the maybe some clarification needed here is the questions about flex licenses mapping between applications. So using for a number of virtual users in LoadRunner versus a number of users for Octane. So how 1 month if we need one, and then 1 month we need another, and I don't know if some clarification is needed because it was teed up as like flex licenses. Yeah.
Sure. So what you have is a currency, a SaaS Flex credit. It's not allocated to a particular product within your SKU list. You can spend it on a monthly basis anywhere, for any item within that SKU list. And that, again, very powerful because in that example, Vince, if you had additional or had allocated capacity for LoadRunner Cloud, and you were running and you were basically not consuming all that capacity, and you currently had or were pondering a decision around Octane, right? You could take those dollars and run a pilot on Octane, right? So they would be in your SKU list, and you'd say, okay, I'm going to take this money that I have surplus, and let's run a pilot of Octane. Let's do a project, and that project's going to take 3 months. So you would essentially take those credits and purchase Octane for 3 months. Now, let's say after 3 months you loved it, then you could say, hey, I want to do this. I'm going to fund it and add the additional dollars, right, required to run this Octane projects or more Octane projects, and we would help you do the math on that. Or you could say, nah, I don't think so, not right now. And you didn't make your software perpetual investment, right? You don't have ongoing maintenance. And that decision it's beautiful because you're able to, run your pilot and then, either extend it and move forward with the product or shut it down. Okay. So
it makes sense. How I've seen it with some of my customers is there's the uses, like it swings. So there's more application lifecycle management parts of the year, and then a few times a year, or there'll be some peak testing, and so licenses, there's more activity in one product for parts of the year, and then in another product for the other parts of the year, and then that's that stranded capacity referenced earlier, right? So we can, we need more licenses in this product versus this product, and so it's just how they're allocating their funds from month to month. Yeah.
And again, and then the other important note too is that those dollars that you put in year one that may have been surplus, you have 3 years or 2 additional years, right, to consume those dollars, and that helps because it's not money that went down the tubes. You actually can plan, and there's other things that you can do with those dollars that are in surplus. Do additional, expansion of the testing, the volume testing or performance testing that you're doing. Implement Octane or use those dollars for Octane for the next 2 years. There's a lot of different ways to repurpose, and again, we'll keep you crisp on your run rate, and it opens doors to use those dollars that normally would have just been lost for productive and valuable software to your company. Okay.
Great questions, all. Please.
Yeah, great questions. Really good. And again, any additional questions that you may have or think of, my team is available. Contact your sales rep. We would be happy to engage, look at your business case, discuss your current license allocations, talk about what you're looking to achieve, upgrades, review the process, do a TCO, compare costs, and so forth. I think it's a big value add in making the decision, and also being able to sell your decision internally.
Right. We had another clarifying question. So sure. Same topic there. So I'll read it verbatim here. So sure. To clarify, the Flex licenses credits are for user licensing only. If we are already on the SaaS model, the cost we are paying for hosting are still separate. So I'm not sure if that's the licensing piece there.
Yeah, so let me clarify a little bit. Hopefully I answer this question. So our SaaS, it contains the licensing, right? So, and again, that can be a variable based, we're going to look at those costs of what the licensing, the number of users that you need, right? So that's one component. It covers the maintenance, obviously, for that license, and we do all the upgrades, latest and greatest version, etc. So it's kind of a variable versus your standard perpetual. And the hosting part, I'm not sure. This is and I don't know if you mean hosting with us SaaS or hosting with on AWS hardware or whatnot. So if you wanted to clarify that question, maybe we could hone in a little bit deeper, and just let me know, Vince. Otherwise, we can take it offline as well.
Okay. We had one come up. If I have 1,000 users, V users in Load Runner Cloud, I run a test with 2,000, and okay, well, I don't know if we can get much past that one. If you have if you're in a Flex deal and you have 1,000 V users in Load Runner Cloud, I don't think you'd be able to light up a test with 2,000 V users.
Right.
So we would need to have a number. We would need to have you could, if you allocated 2,000 V users, and you could run any number of 1,000, current 1,000 user tests, but Yeah.
So one comment I'll
question,
make.
if you could clarify, please, whoever just submitted that question.
Yeah, so one comment I'll make, and then I think we're almost out of time, is that you're not limited by license numbers. It's based on the dollars you want to spend, and then the allocations are just going to reflect that decision you made. So if it's 1,000 virtual users, that's what you're going to have access to. In LoadRunner Cloud, right, you will have access to unlimited runs for that number of virtual users for that month. Okay, there's no variation there. Now, when I say unlimited, it means that you could have chose to implement 2,000 or 3,000 or 20,000, right, for that month, and you're going to be charged for that, so you need to have the funding for that. But there's no limitation on a particular number of licenses besides your ability and desire to pay for them. Okay. And I think we're out of time, Terry. So I'm going to probably wrap it up. Again, would love to engage with you guys. So if you have more questions, need more clarification, please reach out to your Micro Focus rep, and I will guarantee a top-notch resource to help answer all these questions. So, and thank you, Vince and Steve, for your help.
And we can follow up on the outstanding questions. So these questions that have come in through the chat, we can reach out directly and make sure we get those resolved.
Ideally. Okay, that's perfect. Thank you, Vince.
Cheers. Thanks, Jim. Great job.
Right. Take care, everybody. Everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.